Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to another lecture. Dear students, this is lecture number 41, the final term. The subject is English for grade 7. I'm your teacher, Shahid Ali. Dear students, in the previous lecture, I discussed in detail the beginning of the Julius Caesar history or story from the middle of the novel. Dear students, in the previous lessons, in the previous two lectures, I told you that how Julius Caesar was killed by his countrymen, especially his friend, and how he was murdered, and what was the situation after his murder there in Rome. So, dear students, in today's lesson, we will read about what happened to Rome after the murder of Julius Caesar. So here, dear students, this in this lesson, lesson number 5, Antony and Cleopatra. In this lesson, we will find that when the Rome state was uh, when the Rome state was widened and it was expanded because of the successful fights with the neighbors and with the other countries. So, because of that fights, it expanded to many vast areas and many countries. And similarly, as dear students, the story of Egypt Queen Cleopatra, that how the attorney, the general of the Julius Caesar, Antony, how he reached Egypt and how he fell in love with the queen of Egypt, Egyptian queen Cleopatra. So, dear students, here in this lesson, we are told in detail about this. So, let's start today's lesson. This is also a little bit long lesson. Anyhow, I will try to make a maximum lecture for you students. So hope inshallah you will enjoy it. So let's start, dear students, today's lecture. This is lesson number 5, Antony and Cleopatra, the foolish general. This is about Antony, the foolish general. In a room in the palace of Cleopatra, queen of Egypt, two Roman officers two Roman officers were talking quietly. Their names were Great General Antony, who at that time their names were Pelo and Demetrius. They were both in the army of Great General Antony, who at that time was one of the three leaders of the Roman world. Demetrius had only just arrived in Egypt, so Pelo was telling him that had been happening. Dear students, now here the story is in Egypt, where Antony, the general of the late Julius Caesar, he is now in the Egypt. Our general is going too far in his love for the Egyptian queen. He was saying, don't you remember how those good eyes of his were always bright with the joy of battle? Well, now those eyes are only bright when they look at his mistress. In that great Roman heart of his, which was sometime so full of courage that it almost burst, dear students, burst mean suddenly and violently open from internal pressure. This is called bursting or burst. from internal pressure when someone open or someone violently open. So now serves the queen of Egypt. Demetrius was about to ask a question, but at that moment the room began to fill with people. Cleopatra came in with all her servants, courtiers, and friends. Dear students, courtiers mean the attendant at the court. So these were the courtmen, the attendant at the court. These were courtiers and friends, Antony among them. Cleopatra was standing in the middle of the room, with Antony quite close to her. With Antony quite close to her, she turned to him with a mischievous look. Mischievous means barely behaved looking look on her face. How much do you love me? Then she, okay. So, dear students, here it is mentioned that Cleopatra was standing in the middle of the room with Antony quite close to her. She turned to him with a mischievous look on her face. Mischievous looks mean badly behaved looking. How much do you love me? Then she asked, if you really love me as you say you do, tell me how much. She spoke loudly, enough for everyone to hear. If I could tell you how much, then my love would be far too little, said Antony. Antony replied that if I told you about my love, so then my love would be far too little. All the courtiers smiled. All the attendants of the court they smiled. They waited to hear what would be said next. Well said, Cleopatra. If you only loved me half as much as you say you do, how much love would that be? So, dear students, here in this page, this is mentioned the story of the love of the Egyptian queen Cleopatra and General Antony. They are in love with each other, but they are in this situation. They are asking from each other that how much love they both have for each other. Let's move to another page. We would have to find a new world to live in, and a new heaven too. There is not enough room in this whole universe for even part of the love I have for Cleopatra. This is the saying, these are the words of the general for the love of Cleopatra. Messengers from Rome. Dear students, now some people will come, they will bring a message from Rome for the General Antony. Philo looked at Demetrius and was about to say something when a servant hurried past. Quickly come. The servant went straight to Antony and knelt down in front of him. Knelt means he bowed both his knee and sat down in respect. This is called knelt, sitting on both knees. And he said, okay, in front of him, some messengers have arrived with news from Rome. My good lord, he said. Not now, said Antony impatiently. Impatiently, in an impatient manner, he told that not now. Don't tell me the news now. Let us hear them, Antony interrupted Cleopatra. And Cleopatra said that let us hear them. Perhaps, maybe, your good wife, Fulvia, this is the wife of Antony in the Rome, her name is Fulvia, is angry with you, or perhaps young Caesar has some important orders for you. The young Caesar, this is basically the nephew of the late Julius Caesar, who is now a powerful man in the Rome and has controlled the Rome. So the young Caesar has some important orders for you. They will say, You must do this or that, or Caesar will punish you if you disobey. My love Antony seemed surprised. I said perhaps, but I think it must be certain. Cleopatra continued, this news will be that you must not stay here any longer. Caesar says you must leave Egypt, or Fulvia says so, or both of them. So let us hear what news the messengers have brought. Antony began to look uncomfortable. Okay, uncomfortable experiencing physical discomfort. So you are blushing, Antony. You are blushing. Having a red face means blushing. You are blushing, having a red face, Antony. I see your blood is still loyal to Caesar, or else your red cheeks show how ashamed you are when sharp-tongued Fulvia scolded you. Scolding show one's unhappiness. This is called scolding. Then, then scold you. Tell the messengers to come in. Let's hear the news from Rome. Oh, Rome, I hope Rome falls into the river Tiber and is washed away, said Anthony. It doesn't matter to me. Dear student, here in this passage, the messengers came from Rome and they brought news. Now, here is the conversation between the Antony, and here is the Antony and Cleopatra. The Antony don't want to hear the messengers at a time, but Cleopatra, she insisted and she wanted that perhaps there may be news from the farmer wife of the Antony, Fulvia. So let uh, hear them and let ask them the news they brought from the Rome. So this situation is running here in this page. Let's move to another page. Even if this great white Roman world falls to pieces, my piece is here, and the most noble thing in life is to do this. He put his arm around Cleopatra and kissed her. Cleopatra pulled herself away from him. Liar, she said, and turned to sum up the other courtiers. Why did Antony marry Fulvia? I wonder if he did not love her, she asked them. Antony looked at her smiling for the sake of love. Let us not waste our time quarreling, fighting, or reasoning with each other. We should not let even a minute of our lives pass without some pleasure. Come, what shall we do this evening? Here the messengers, quarrelsome queen. Quarrelsome means given to quarreling or in a quarrel mood, the queen said. Antony had almost shouted at her with impatience. Impatience, this means in an impatient manner. But he quickly stopped himself. Now listen to me. The only messengers I want to hear is this evening are the ones who sent to me. Then later on, we will go out and just wander through the streets and watch the people. Come, my queen, last night you said that is what you wanted to do. Antony looked Cleopatra's hands, took Cleopatra's hand. She saw that he would not bother with the news, bother someone that caused trouble, a source of unhappiness. He will not bother. He will not bother with the news from Rome that evening, which was exactly what she wanted. Happily, she allowed him to lead her out of the room. The room. Demetrius was amazed at what he had seen. and heard, "Does Antony really think so little of Caesar?" he asked Pilo. "Sometimes he is completely different to the Antony we used to know," said Pilo. "Well, I am sorry to see it. In Rome, people are saying that he has given himself up to the love of this queen. It seems, it seems that they are right. Let us hope he comes to his senses before much longer." A dangerous woman. Pelo and Demetrius had good reason to worry. Antony was no ordinary man, and Rome was no ordinary place. Okay, students, this was the next page here. Also, the love story and quarrel of the both lover are mentioned, and also the worriness of these two attendants, these two servants, Philo and Demetrius, about the general Antony. They are too much worried about them because they consider Antony one of the important figure of Rome, and similarly, Rome is an important place. So they are worried about him, that how he fell in the love of a queen. Next is, by the time Julius Caesar died, the Roman world, the Roman Empire, as it would soon be known, was already very large. Slowly but surely, Rome's power was spreading further and further, even into the ancient. Ancient means old, old, mysterious of an mysterious of an obscure nature land of Egypt. People began to think that the Romans would soon be masters of the whole world. Although the Romans were strong, they often fought among themselves, and they found it difficult to rule so many different countries and so many different people peacefully. From time to time, there were terrible civil wars when one Roman leader would send his armies against another. After the death of Julius Caesar, Antony Lepidus and the young Octavius Caesar, who was the nephew of Julius Caesar, ruled Roman world together. These three were the most powerful men at the time, so long as they agreed with one another and worked together. The Roman world would enjoy peace. Disagreements, however, were likely to cause terrible trouble. Egypt at this time was still an independent country, free, independent, separate country, but it was slowly falling into the hands of the Romans. The Queen Cleopatra was unmarried and ruled alone. Alone, she was ruling the Egypt. The Queen Cleopatra was okay. The great beauty and intelligence were famous throughout the world, and it was said that any man who met her would fall in love with her immediately, quickly, on the spot. Powerful men who fall in love with such a beautiful woman will obey her. And because of that, the Romans thought Cleopatra might be dangerous. She might be dangerous. Antony had therefore gone to Egypt to meet her and to try to discover if she was plotting, she was making a plan against the Romans. When Antony first saw Cleopatra, she was on a beautiful sailing ship made of gold. The oars were of silver and moved in time to music. Oars, dear students, oars, an instrument used to steer a boat. Okay, steering, while steering boat, oars are oars are used. The sails were purple and gray and gave out a sweet scent. Okay, a distinctive odor that is pleasant fragrance. Cleopatra herself lay on a golden couch. This is a chair or a sofa, a place where one or many persons can sit. Above her, so protect her from the sun, was a large cloth of gold, and at her side were boys with fans to keep her cool. Antony was overcome by this amazing sight. Dear student, here in this page, the expandness or the wideness of the Roman power is mentioned here. Similarly, the beauty of the Queen Cleopatra is described in this page, that how much she was beautiful and how she was sailing in a boat and how the boys were making pen to keep her cool, and similarly all the things related to her they were made from the gold. So she was living a luxurious life. This is mentioned here in detail in this page. Let's move to another page. Like other before him, he fell in love with Cleopatra when they met face to face. When Antony met with the Cleopatra, they each fell in love with each other. Cleopatra fell in love with Antony too. He was as famous for his success in war and his political power as Cleopatra was for her beauty. Both were famous. One was famous for wars and bravery, the other, the queen, was famous for her beauty. Cleopatra wanted him to live with her in Egypt for the rest of their lives together. So Antony stayed in Egypt enjoying the rich, lazy life that Cleopatra and her friends enjoyed. He tried to forget what was happening in Rome and his real purpose in coming to Egypt. Next topic is, dear students, the greatest liar. The news that had come from Rome was very serious. When Antony at last decided to hear the men they brought the news, they are called messengers, he was very shocked. He was very shocked and unpleasant or disappointing surprise. Shocked, unpleasant, or disappointing surprise. He began to realize how weak and stupid he had been. Stupid, a person who is not very bright, not intelligent. First, he heard that Fulvia, his wife, had used her wealth and power to start a war against his brother Lucius. The two had soon made up their quarrel and then joined forces again against Octavius. Octavius Caesar, he is the nephew of the late Julius Caesar. In the battle that followed, they had lost, and Caesar had forced them to leave Italy. This was very bad news for Antony. He and Octavius Caesar were supposed to be friends, yet Antony's wife and brother had attacked him. Worse was to come in the eastern part of the empire of the state, not far from Egypt. The Persian king had sent armies into the three Roman provinces of Syria, Lydia, and Lonin. These were all rich lands controlled by the Romans. Antony had been nearby at the time, but had done nothing to prevent the attack. Last of all, another messenger brought news of the death of the Fulvia after being driven from Italy with Lucius. She had fallen ill and died. This is the former wife, the wife of the Antony in the Rome. She fell in ill and died. This was the news brought by a messenger. Anthony knew that much of this trouble was caused by his own bad behavior. He was needed in Rome to help his own to help fight enemies who were moving ever closer. He decided that he must leave Egypt. Cleopatra had suspected she has doubt that something was wrong. Anthony was quite happy at the beginning of the day. She told Eras, one of her serving women, but suddenly a Roman thought struck him, and since then he had been quite serious. When Anthony hurried into her room, quickly went into her room, she pretended to be ill. The queen pretended to be ill. I'm sorry to have to tell you, began Anthony. He knew that she would not like what he was going to say. Help me, dear chairman, Cleopatra cried out. She held on to the arm of her other servant. I am feeling faint, senseless, unconsciousness and shall fall down. She allowed chairman to place her her on a couch, on a sofa, and on a chair. Slowly she settled down, looking very weak. Now, my dearest queen, said Anthony, please do not stand so close, Cleopatra said to chairman. She pretended she could not breathe easily. She was just pretending, just saying that she could not breathe easily. She also pretended she was not interested at all in anything Anthony had to say. What is the matter? Anthony said. Anthony was becoming worried. Oh, nothing. Take no notice. I can see from the look on your face that you have heard some good news. So, what does your wife have to say? You may go back to her. You know, truly, I wish she had never let you come. I hope she does not say that I am keeping you here. I have no power over you. You are here. You are hers. The gods know best, Anthony began importantly. Dear students, this was the conversation between the Queen Cleopatra and Antony, how they talked at each other when the Antony got the message from the Rome. So then the Queen pretended to be ill and she was near to fall down on the floor and she was pretending that she could not breathe, she can't breathe easily, but this was just pretension and she was just making fun with Anthony and just talking with him in such a way so that she can uh, get of her of him. She can get himself of him from the Anthony. So, dear students, here in this last page, this is, I think, last page of this lecture. Then, inshallah, there will be another lecture in the remaining part of this lesson. So, this is the last page. Oh, never was a queen so greatly betrayed. Betray means cause someone to believe an untruth. This is called betray. Cleopatra sighed. This is also have or utter a sigh. Breathe deeply. Okay, breathe deeply. Yet I cannot say I am surprised. Why should I think Anthony could be true to me when he is so false to Fulvia, most sweet queen? No, please, there is no need to make excuses. Just say goodbye and go. When you prayed to me to allow you to stay, that was the time for words. There was no talk of going away then. Our eyes and lips were all for love, and nothing else. Every part of us was a piece of heaven and a paradise. And it must still be true, I suppose, or else you, the greatest soldier in the world, have become the greatest liar. Now, this is the attitude of the queen for the Anthony. What? Anthony was becoming angry. He was becoming angry. The two stared at each other, looking with straight eyes with each other for a moment. Then Anthony began again. There was no point he could see in being gentle in a plain, simple manner. He quickly told the queen what he had heard, including the news of the death of his wife Olivia. Then how false you are! Your wife, whom you love so much, is dead. So where are your tears? Oh, I can see from this how much the news of my own death would affect you, said Cleopatra. Antony refused to quarrel. Instead, he told her how much he loved her and that although he had to live, his heart would always be in Egypt with her. So, dear students, this was a little bit of the story from the Antony and the Cleopatra, how Antony came to the Egypt and how he fell in love with the queen, and then how he got the news from the Rome, and then at the end now what is going the queen with Antony. So, dear students, inshallah, in the coming lecture, you will find it more interesting the remaining part of this lesson, so try to understand this part of the lecture and hope inshallah you will memorize the lecture well. See you in the next part of this lecture, this lesson. Up to date. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.